Canada. So West Virginia, of course, one of the states that's sending National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. So why is cracking down on D.C. crime important to West Virginia?
Yeah, it's not just important to West Virginia, but it's important to everybody in this country. So DC's ability to govern itself matters to every single American because the District of Columbia isn't just a tourist destination. It's a place where the business of our country is done. And we have 6,800 National Guard troops here in West Virginia. And the president has asked us to send several hundred of them into DC to make sure that our nation's capital is safe for the citizens of this country to do the business of this country. And Republicans are great at doing two things at once. Our National Guard has a dual role, and law enforcement very clearly fits within that role as defined in Section 32502F in the federal code. And so what we have here is the president asking for some help, and the people of West Virginia, as we always do, very, very grateful for the opportunity to lend a hand to make the people of D.C. safer and to make everyone who visits D.C. feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and that's the goal. What do you think about the updated number that we just reported? 400 arrests made so far. Certainly can't make things less safe. What are your thoughts on that?
So 400 arrests in just... Now, this is just a few days after Donald Trump issued the order for the federal government to take over the job of preserving law and order in Washington, D.C. We've seen the footage over the last week of Democrats, left-wing media complaining and whining and mewling, calling Trump a dictator. And here's how I see things, and I hope you see the sense in what I'm about to say. If you have one group of people consistently pushing against law enforcement, calling for the police force to be defunded, calling for the police to not do their jobs and to always be concerned that they are going to be persecuted, prosecuted, and possibly discharged disgracefully from the police force for doing their jobs. And then that spirals into a crime wave that lasts for years. In the case of Washington, D.C., decades. And then they say nothing throughout that period because it's okay for you to be mugged while driving down the street. It's okay for you to be attacked while walking with your spouse or your significant other down the street after you went for a lovely dinner at your favorite spot. But oh no, there's someone in a hood who jumps out of the street corner brandishing a knife or a gun. And then you have to go through this horror again and again in Washington, D.C. For the residents of Washington, D.C., that isn't something that happens once in a while. It's just a regular Tuesday. That's what they see regularly. And suddenly, the Trump administration issues this order to federalize the law enforcement system in Washington, D.C., and crime drops. Who could have guessed that if you enforce crime, that it goes away? So, hearing these numbers is amazing. But hearing the meltdown on the left is equally disturbing because it's as if you're being gaslit into believing that law and order is illegal.
So I was a DC resident for about 10 years. I went to college in DC. I've seen what their government can look like, and I've seen what DC looks like when crime is really, really bad. And the numbers speak for themselves. When you show criminals that you are willing to arrest them and that you are present in the neighborhoods where they're going to be committing crimes, not only does crime go down, but so do arrests go up, and citizens feel safer. And I think you can see that in the either affirmative conversations that the mayor and the police chief are having about this, as well as just residents in DC. I hear it every day from people in West Virginia who work in DC that this has been a huge success and will continue to be so.
Okay, we also want to ask you about something entirely different, but also on the topic of safety on social media. Instagram recently changed its location sharing feature. So you and 36 other attorneys general are calling for Instagram to address this and add more safety precautions in its location sharing. So can you...
All right, so that's unrelated to this. So we'll just jump into the counter narrative by TDSBC. TDSBC is claiming that DC residents are upset that they are safer. So let's see who these mysterious residents are, as our favorite pundit, Jen Psaki, decides to enlighten us.
Of course, they want this experiment repeated in cities run by Democrats all over the country. That's the whole plan. That's the goal. Meanwhile, the actual residents of the city Trump is trying to take over are definitely not aligned with that viewpoint, and they are pushing back. This was the scene at the intersection of 14th Street and W Street in Washington, D.C. last.
Okay, so Jen Psaki wants us to believe that the actual residents of Washington, D.C. are these woke, white, liberal renter protesters who show up when they are paid to show up at cities to protest common sense policies. So all of these guys we're supposed to believe actually live in the city. These are just a handful of people. Now look at the neighborhood, and only these guys popped out of their nice cozy apartments, and everyone else is in their neighborhoods minding their businesses and wondering who these people are, disturbing the peace. We did cover in a previous video that most of these protesters that showed up in Washington, D.C. are actually rented. And we covered last year during the election campaign that it appeared that a lot of so-called rally attendees were being bussed in to Kamala Harris's rallies. So TDSBC continues to sink lower and lower on the integrity scale. In fact, they've sunk through the floor by this time, because every time they open their mouths, they can't help but say the most outlandish things about common sense policies that are being put in place by conservative policymakers. So here is the National Guard on patrol in DC, patrolling for criminals, not law-abiding citizens, for criminals. And this group of people are protesting the enforcement of law and order. And here again, we see the Democrat Party being the party that sides with crime and criminal illegal immigrants. They want you to believe that they are for law and order. You can hear her. We heard her spiel. Yes, I skipped forward a little. You hear her spiel about conspiracy theories and about how Barack Obama was accused of wanting to implement martial law and all of the things that, they label as conspiracy theories until it suits their narrative. And they spin it to say, for example, where are the Epstein files? Well, they are the same people that claim that there were no Epstein files, and that was a conspiracy theory. Now, it's a big deal. Everything that Trump does right now that spells success, they say he's doing it to deflect from the Epstein files that they all claimed was a conspiracy theory. So let's hear more. Let's hear more, because this is entertaining. Let's hear how Jen twists herself into a knot trying to make this make sense.
14th Street and W Street in Washington, D.C. last night. So to give you a sense, this is a neighborhood full of restaurants and bars, and lots of people live there. Bystanders chanted things like, "Get off our streets," "Go home fascists," and "Read the Constitution," at a bizarre mix of federal law enforcement officers and local police who are now under Trump's control.
Bizarre. It is bizarre for people to band together to keep the residents of Washington, D.C. safe. Yeah, they've succeeded in convincing themselves that the renter protesters are actually protesting law and order, and that it all makes sense. MSNBC, of course, is siding with the criminals and illegal immigrants. Let's finish up with this segment, and then we'll basically discuss the bottom line. Don't forget that you can leave a chat if you're watching in real time. Give us your thoughts. Thank you for engaging in the poll. I can see that the poll is being voted on. And the question on the poll, again, is should the feds take over local police when they clearly don't do their job of arresting criminals? All right. And there's 100% that says yes. So let's keep the poll going. All right. So let's just take a little more and then we'll move on.
Those officers had set up a checkpoint where for about 2 hours last night, they stopped dozens of cars and detained at least 2 people. Federal agents reportedly stopping cars for things as minor as seatbelt violations. And
well, seatbelt violations are federal law. If you are driving down the street or the highway without your seatbelt, it's a law to have your seatbelt on. And to be honest, I think this is what they call the broken window policy, that if you overlook one crime, you overlook multiple crimes. So if one person who consistently has been used to driving down the street without the seatbelt on, possibly that same person is habitually breaking other laws that should apply to law-abiding citizens. And so when you see someone who should be putting on their seatbelt, it's very likely that they are breaking some other law. That's really the way law enforcement works. As a law-abiding citizen, I try to keep every law on the books. I do my best. If I miss something, I deserve to be stopped. I deserve to be stopped because I was asking for it. And when I'm stopped and they discover something else that I did that I shouldn't be doing, it's on me. It isn't on the good people who are trying to ensure that law enforcement is being carried out in the city, keeping all of us safe. Even the criminals, even the criminals, because if you catch other criminals who are trying to hurt other criminals, you keep the criminals that are trying to that are being attacked also from being hurt. So it's good for everyone. Okay, it's good for everyone. Jen, with a multi-million-dollar contract with TDSBC, and with her, living in her very, interesting, safe bubble, okay, where she goes from apartment to limousine to studio and back into the limousine, back to the apartment, doesn't, experience any of the tragedy that most of these people in minority communities experience because of how much crime is out of control.
And broken taillights, not sure that's really cracking down on crime. And then asking drivers, of course, about their immigration status, which is probably likely what this is all about.
Okay, so Jen Psaki doesn't live in the real world. There's a reason why broken taillights are stopped, because if the taillights of a vehicle in front of you isn't working, the chances that that vehicle could cause an accident somewhere down the road is very high, because they aren't signaling to the people behind them that they're about to make a hard stop. These things keep people safe. So when there's no news, talking heads like Jen Psaki scratch the ground like hens, picking at every fragment that might just be a nothing burger, but they scratch anyway, and they raise it up like they found the ring of power. And that totally makes no sense. Her conversation here about how the federal takeover is so horrible and so bad doesn't. Let me know in the chat or in the comment section if you agree with her position. Now we're going to go into the comment section because we have to. The comment section tends to be very, very interesting to watch. When you see the dynamic between people of common sense and those who are fed the talking points from MSNBC, it is cringe, but we will sally forth into the breach. So we will start with the comments coming from the very interesting. Okay, I'm going to go into the comment section, but Babs Bat says, "Boy, do they need it! Piss poor leadership in Chicago." I agree. I agree. Chicago has been ground zero for violent crime for decades. They've been known for crime for decades. And for a city that is so conversant with violent crime, they should have gotten good at dealing with violent crime, but they've gotten worse. And the mayor of Chicago doesn't seem to know what he's doing. but I guarantee you he knows what he's doing. He's towing a party line that is profitable to him. He will not live with the consequences of these policies. He will not. Open borders, making it a sanctuary city, and being soft on crime. He doesn't live with those consequences. But all he gets to do is stand in front of the camera and rage at everyone who wants common sense policies to be enacted in Chicago. Thanks, Babsbat, for that comment, and let me know where you're watching from. I would love to know that. Okay, so this is the crowd from TDSBC. All right, this is the crowd from TDSBC. We're reading the comment. All right, and I want to assume that these are real people. Okay, so we have Pixie Patricia 3404 says, Jeffrey, Epstein files must not be forgotten. Bring them on. Yeah, the people who said that it was a conspiracy theory. Yep, Babsbat, Chicago used to be a good city. It used to be. It used to be. In fact, I remember being told that Chicago was one of the few cities where blacks weren't segregated. Correct me if I'm wrong, Babsbat, but I think that was one of the stories about Chicago. It was very inclusive. It was a non-segregation city, and most of the crime was being perpetrated by more, of the Caucasian community. So it used to be a good city from what I've heard. All right. Pocket Ninja says, we don't want criminals in DC, says the convicted criminal. Yep, they always, when the whole thing about the 35 or 37 felony convictions came down last year, I said that if Trump wins, they're going to use this all through his presidency. They're going to try to gaslight us into believing that, a convicted criminal is doing all these things, so therefore it must not be good. And, Pocket Ninja Night, go touch grass. TCB0835, the minute you start to have the checkpoints, you're in trouble. You were in trouble when crime went through the roof, and TCB0835 doesn't live in Washington, D.C., so he doesn't know what he's talking about. He most likely lives in a suburb, predominantly white, and there's literally no crime. And he has TDSBC or BS Now, as they've rebranded themselves recently, playing on a loop and drinking the sludge that is the propaganda that they continue to put out there. All right. We warned them this could happen and they didn't believe us. You warned who? You warned who? And that's the thing with leftists. They create a problem and then they scream bloody murder when you step in to fix the problem they caused. And in order to fix the problem, you literally have to skirt the edges of the Constitution to fix the major problem that they caused. Look at over 10 million illegal immigrants flooding the country with video upon video evidence that this was happening. And what did TDSBC say about it? The Biden administration says that the border is secure. Therefore, the border is secure. Everyone who's filming it, oh, Elon, don't go there. Elon, don't go there. Oh no, don't show no. Okay, Elon is now the enemy. The last 4 years was a trip. The last 4 years was a trip. It was crazy to watch what was going on in the United States. I didn't believe it sitting in Nigeria watching it, but it was real. Let's move on to the comment section under Fox News. So Fox News, we have P-Dub who says every city should be safe. The lawlessness has gone on far too long. Why don't you have this kind of narrative on outlets like MSNBC? Because the viewers of I keep saying MSNBC, the TDSBC, is that the viewers there have been conditioned to believe that up is down and down is up. A couple of comments from Fox News, because they're basically preaching to the choir. Who would have thought You arrest the criminals and crime drops. It's such a complicated equation. It's complicated for people who believe that the criminals are the good guys. And if you are running interference for a criminal, they continue to do crime. Babs Bat says, yeah, can anybody understand? He was talking about what he was talking about at the start. All right, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. So if you could put up more information, I could give you an answer. And then one more comment. It also helps when the young ones can see the consequences of these thugs in their neighborhood, and that is true. If you do not show that that crime is punished, you will get more crime. If what you have is gang or thug life being promoted, in mainstream media, what you get is a thug culture, which is basically what has been promoted, largely black